Richard Goodall, the winner of America's Got Talent, is finally back here in Indiana tonight.
Richard Goodall might be sentenced to life in prison. For over 20 years, Richard Goodall was known as the quiet janitor with a hidden voice, shocking everyone on America's Got Talent. But what if his leap to fame came with a price no one saw coming? This incredible journey has a twist that left fans speechless. The rise of the singing janitor. Richard Goodall's journey from a humble janitor to a millionaire is nothing short of inspiring. Born in Indianapolis, Indiana, Richard moved to Terre Haute at a young age and was adopted by Virginia M. Goodall. After graduating from North Vigo High School in 1987, he took his first steps into the world of music through local country karaoke competitions and eventually found himself performing with gospel bands. For more than 20 years, Richard worked as a custodian, filling the quiet school hallways each morning with the soft sound of his broom. But there was more to him than his role as a janitor. Beneath his calm attitude was a voice powerful enough to someday reach millions, with a dream so strong that it would take him from sweeping floors to captivating hearts across the nation. As a young boy, Richard found solace in music. In the living room of his family's modest home, he'd sit in front of his Radio Shack stereo, listening intently to the tunes of the 70s and 80s. Rock bands of the era transported him to another world, but it was Journey that truly captured his heart. Steve Perry's soaring voice became Richard's beacon, a guiding light that showed him the power of music to move people. But for Richard, music wasn't a path he would immediately pursue. He didn't have formal vocal training, nor did he dream of becoming a star. After high school, while many of his classmates chased their ambitions in far-off cities, Richard chose a quieter, steadier route. He took a job as a janitor with the Vigo County School Corporation, a position he would hold for over 20 years. Every morning, Richard would arrive at the school before the first bell rang, ensuring that the halls were spotless, the classrooms tidy, and the floors gleaming. He worked in the background, a figure familiar to the students and staff, yet often overlooked. But what they didn't see was the fire that still burned inside him, the love for music that he kept alive in the quiet moments of his day. And it was within the walls of that very school where Richard's talent would begin to emerge, though in the most unexpected of ways. Each year, the school held talent shows and events, and Richard was always a fixture at these occasions. While many might have expected the janitor to simply sweep up after the festivities, Richard had something else in mind. At the 5th grade graduation ceremony, year after year, Richard would step onto the stage, microphone in hand, and sing his heart out. His voice, powerful and soulful, left both students and parents in awe. For many of the children, this performance became a highlight of their final days in elementary school. And for Richard, it was a small way to share his passion with the community he had come to love. Despite the raw power of his voice, Richard Goodall's talent remained hidden, a secret known only to the halls of his small-town school. To those who witnessed his rare performances, he was a treasure, a soul meant for something greater. But Richard himself was content to stay out of the spotlight. He took pride in his work, filling his days with quiet dedication as a janitor, sweeping floors and cleaning classrooms, even as a burning desire lay just beneath the surface. Somewhere within, he dreamed of a day when his voice might escape the school walls and reach beyond his small world. But how could a man whose days were filled with mops and dust find himself on the brink of stardom? How did this love for old records and rock anthems transform his fate so suddenly, from humble janitor to global sensation? The answer lies in a single, life-altering performance that turned his world upside down. One song, one moment, and his life changed overnight as his voice echoed across the world. Would Richard Goodall be able to handle this whirlwind of fame? Could he endure the spotlight that he never sought, as millions of people now demanded to hear more from this humble janitor with a voice like no other? The golden buzzer. After years of hiding in the background, Richard Goodall finally took the step he'd always dreamed of. For years, students and teachers had told him to show his voice to the world. And then, the chance came. Standing on the stage of America's Got Talent, his heart raced as the bright lights and cameras focused on him. It was nothing like the quiet school hallways he was used to. But as soon as he started to sing, all his fears faded away. This was his moment, and he was ready to let the world hear the voice he had kept hidden for so long. Richard could sing any kind of song, but he chose one that meant a lot to him. Journey's Don't Stop Believin'. As he sang, His voice filled the theater, leaving the crowd stunned. For the first time, the singing janitor had his moment in front of millions. When the music started, his nerves disappeared, and his strong, soulful voice filled the room. The judges looked moved, and the audience watched in silence, amazed as he hit every note perfectly. Then something happened that Richard had only ever dreamed of. When the last note faded, the audience burst into applause, and to his surprise, one of the judges pressed the golden buzzer. Confetti fell all around him, and Richard stood there, overwhelmed, with tears in his eyes. This was the moment he had waited for his whole life, the moment that would change everything. It was the kind of moment that changes everything, a life-defining audition. Richard Goodall, the singing janitor from Terre Haute, stepped onto the stage of America's Got Talent and poured his heart out for the world to see. The lights were bright, the judges sat with critical eyes, and the audience waited in anticipation. But Richard wasn't focused on any of that. For him, this was his chance, the moment he had quietly dreamed about for decades. The Terre Haute community had always known Richard's kind heart and incredible voice, but now the world was getting a glimpse of what made him so special. Determined to support him on this incredible journey, his friends, neighbors, and local businesses came together in an extraordinary show of solidarity. Fundraisers were organized, donations poured in, and the entire town worked to ensure that Richard had everything he needed to make his dream of competing on AGT a reality. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the belief they had in him, the recognition of how much he had given to their community over the years. For Richard, this support meant everything. He had spent over 2 decades quietly working behind the scenes, ensuring that the schools in his community were well kept, all the while sharing his voice with those lucky enough to hear it. Now that same community was giving back, showing him that his talent and kindness had not gone unnoticed. But Richard's journey didn't stop there. His audition went viral, spreading across social media like wildfire. People from all corners of the globe were sharing clips of the singing janitor, marveling at how someone so unassuming could possess such an extraordinary talent. For Richard, it was overwhelming. He had never sought fame or fortune. He simply loved to sing. Yet here he was, with millions of fans cheering him on, many of them commenting on how his story was a reminder that it's never too late to chase your dreams. Richard's sudden rise to fame brought with it a whirlwind of attention. Interviews, television appearances, and even offers to perform at larger venues began pouring in. Through it all, Richard remained the same humble man he had always been. Despite the newfound recognition, he never forgot where he came from, or the students who had believed in him from the start. In fact, one of the first things he did after his audition aired was to return to the school and sing for the children once again. This time, though, it was different. The kids looked at him not just as their janitor, but as a hometown hero. While many would have been tempted to leave their old life behind after such an experience, Richard stayed grounded. He continued his work at the school, sweeping the halls and greeting the students with a smile each morning. Fame for Richard wasn't about leaving behind the life he had built. It was about showing others, especially the children he worked with, that anything is possible if you follow your passion. For over 2 decades, Richard quietly nurtured his love for music, sharing it with those around him in small, meaningful ways. And when the moment came for him to share it with the world, he embraced it with grace and humility. Now, as he continues to balance his work as a janitor with his growing music career, Richard serves as an inspiration to millions. But behind Richard Goodall's incredible voice lies a story of heartache. How did a personal tragedy, the loss of a loved one, inspire him to pour his pain into music? Could the song he sang in their memory be the key to healing, and the moment that truly connected him with audiences around the world? Tragedies behind the glamour. The song that rocketed him to fame showed his talent, but it didn't capture his true story. By August, when Richard Goodall returned to the America's Got Talent stage for the quarterfinals, something was different. This time, his performance wasn't just about wowing the judges or the crowd. It carried a personal, heartbreaking meaning. Richard chose Michael Bolton's "How Am I Supposed to Live Without You?", a song that held a deep, hidden message. Only those who knew his journey could feel the weight of this choice, as the song spoke to his heart in a way that no one expected. As Richard stepped onto the stage, his fiancée, Angie Van Oven, sat in the audience, beaming with pride. This was a significant moment for her too. Angie had been Richard's rock, supporting him through the most difficult chapter of his life, a chapter marked by loss, grief, and the overwhelming pain of saying goodbye to someone he loved dearly. In June of 2021, Richard's wife of 29 years had passed away after a long and painful battle with cancer. That loss had shaken Richard to his core, leaving him devastated and unsure of how to move forward. The woman he had shared his life with for nearly 3 decades was gone, and the future felt uncertain and empty. But somehow, through the darkness, Richard found a way to keep going. Music became his outlet, his therapy, his way of processing the unimaginable pain he felt. And Angie was there every step of the way, giving him the strength to continue pursuing his passion, even when it seemed impossible. As the first notes of the song played, the atmosphere in the theater shifted. Richard's voice, raw with emotion, filled the room. He wasn't just singing a song, he was telling a story, his story. Every word of the song seemed to echo the pain, love, and heartbreak he had experienced over the past year. The audience could feel it too. This performance wasn't about hitting the perfect notes or delivering a flawless vocal run. It was about something far deeper. It was about honoring the love he had lost and the love he had found again. It was about facing life's toughest challenges and somehow finding the courage to keep moving forward. The reactions from judges were a treat to watch. Sofia Vergara had a beautiful take. Moved by the dedication to Angie, she remarked on how special it must have been for her to hear Richard sing that song with such emotion. She could see the deep connection between them, and the fact that Richard had found love again after such a devastating loss was something truly beautiful. Simon Cowell acknowledged Richard as one of the most memorable contestants the show had seen in a long time. He praised Richard for his dedication and authenticity, but he wasn't entirely sold on the song choice. To Simon, "How am I supposed to live without you?" felt too old-fashioned for the competition. However, Simon's critique didn't take away from the emotional depth of the performance. It was clear that Richard wasn't performing to win points with the judges. He was performing for himself, for Angie, and for the memory of his late wife. For Richard, this performance was about so much more than impressing the judges or advancing to the next round. It was a moment of healing, a chance to channel his grief and love into something meaningful. In many ways, it was a tribute, not just to his late wife, but to everyone who had stood by him during the hardest time of his life. Angie had been there for him when he needed it most, and now she was in the audience, watching him shine on one of the biggest stages in the world. The loss of his wife had marked a painful chapter in Richard's life, but it didn't define him. Instead, Richard found the strength to keep going, to keep singing, and to keep living, even when it felt impossible. His journey wasn't just about overcoming personal tragedy. It was about rediscovering joy and purpose, about finding love again, and about using music as a way to heal. For Richard, every performance was a chance to share a piece of his story, and in doing so, he touched the hearts of millions. As the confetti from his earlier golden buzzer moment had settled, Richard's story continued to unfold in ways that no one could have predicted. His ability to channel his personal struggles into his music was what made him stand out, not just as a singer, but as a human being. His voice wasn't just technically impressive, it was emotionally resonant. Audiences connected with him because they could feel the truth in every word he sang. They saw a man who had been through the darkest days of his life and had come out on the other side. Not broken, but stronger. It's a very straightforward, practical example that life is filled with both unimaginable losses and unexpected blessings. Through all the heartache, Richard had Angie by his side, and together, they were building a new chapter, one that was filled with hope and music. By the end of his performance, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Richard had done more than just sing a song. He had shared a piece of his soul. His journey on America's Got Talent was no longer just about showcasing his vocal talent. It had become a story of love, of finding light in the darkest of times, and of the power of music to heal even the deepest wounds. How did years of dedication and quiet perseverance shape the man behind the microphone? What challenges did he face along the way? And how did he continue to move forward, even when no one was watching? A patient journey as Richard's talent finally shines. Richard Goodall's story is the kind that shocks you and sticks with you. Imagine a man who spent over 20 years quietly cleaning school halls suddenly finding himself in the national spotlight. That's what makes his journey unforgettable. It shows that incredible talent can hide in the most ordinary places, and sometimes it only takes a single brave moment to reveal it to the world. For years, he was simply the singing janitor. His powerful voice would echo through school auditoriums during talent shows or graduations, but outside those walls, no one knew. Richard never tried to make it big in music or chase fame. He chose a quiet, steady life dedicated to his job and the community he loved. Yet deep down, music was his true passion, and eventually that passion sparked a leap of faith. When Richard took the America's Got Talent stage, it wasn't just about chasing a dream. It was a bold statement. He was proving to himself and everyone else that no matter who you are or where you come from, your talent can take you further than you ever imagined. As he sang with the voice he'd kept hidden, he won over not only the judges, but millions across the nation. Richard's story shatters every stereotype about success. Society often boxes people in, thinking only the young, glamorous, or well-connected find fame. But here was Richard, a janitor of over 20 years, becoming one of the most loved contestants on one of the biggest talent shows. His story proves that greatness can come from the most unexpected people. Sometimes the stars are hidden among us, in the faces we pass every day without even a second look. From the quiet hallways of a school to the America's Got Talent stage, his story is proof that no dream is too big and no path is too unlikely. But what's next for Richard? Could this just be the beginning of something even greater? Stay tuned, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to like this video if Richard's story moved you as much as it did us. See you in the next one.